Now remember, all eyes are on Vladimir Putin as he arrives in Delhi. Remember, the Russia-Ukraine war still shadows this visit to the country. Ahead of this visit, Russia's State Duma has cleared the defense pact, which will give India and Russia shared access to ports, airspace, and military logistics. Why is this such an important visit at the time at which it's taking place? That's going to be our top focus for now. Take a look at this report.
A big defense shake-up just hours before Vladimir Putin lands in Delhi. In a major pre-visit surprise, Russia's lower house, the State Duma, has ratified the reciprocal exchange of logistic support, aka the RELOS Pact, giving a fresh push to the India-Russia defense partnership. RELOS allows the mutual use of airspace and ports by Indian and Russian warships and aircraft and sets rules for logistics. RELOS is used during joint military exercises and humanitarian missions, disaster relief operations, and other coordinated deployments. And just hours before the ratification, President Vladimir Putin underscored the importance of India in Moscow's global strategy.
Действовать на внешнем контуре, исходя из собственных национальных интересов.
We will fulfill our obligations to foreign partners and expand cooperation with those countries that are interested in it. As I have already said, the vast majority of countries act rationally and pragmatically. Over the past 3 years, we have significantly increased our trade volume with them. First and foremost, I mean our key partners, China and India, with whom we share many years of friendship and strategic cooperation.
Имею в виду ключевых партнеров – Китай, Индию.
Ahead of the visit, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov also hinted at big defense conversations, including renewed discussions around the Su-57 next-generation fighter, joint aerospace projects.
So, Su-57s, best plane in the world. Yes, it's not over-exaggeration. It's the best plane in the world. And the issue of Su-57s certainly will be on the agenda during the coming visit. So let's not speak about the details. There are lots of competitors in the world, and some of the competitors are not, let's say, sticking their business to international law.
And this is where the timing matters. Putin's trip comes as India-US ties face their worst turbulence in nearly 20 years, with Washington slapping 50% tariffs on Indian goods, including 25% punitive levies on India's Russian oil imports. It also comes as Russia and the US negotiate the revised Trump-framed 19-point peace plan for Ukraine, putting New Delhi right in the middle of a shifting global triangle: Washington, Moscow, and New Delhi. A surprise ratification in Moscow, strong words from the Kremlin, and a hardening US line, all setting the stage for one of the most keenly watched India-Russia summits in years. Bureau Report, India Today.
And joining me now are special guests on that big issue with the big questions. Is India still Russia's all-weather friend? Should we treat Moscow as an all-weather friend? Can India really afford at this moment in global conflicts to put all their eggs in Putin's basket? Does India have any role to play at all in ending the Russia-Ukraine war? And how can India reduce its massive trade deficit with Russia? Those are some of the questions we'll put to you. Joining us are our special guests. Ajay Malhotra is former Indian ambassador to Russia. Alexei Zakharov is fellow at the Observer Research Foundation. Brahma Chellaney, strategic affairs expert and former advisor to India's National Security Council. And Rory Suchet is a presenter with Russia Today. Remember, RT India will be inaugurated by President Putin on his visit here. Appreciate all of you joining us here on the show today. Let me come first to you, Ajay Malhotra. Ambassador Malhotra, what do you see as really, why is this visit so important, coming at a time when we are not seeing an early end, as of now at least, to the Russia-Ukraine war?
Well, this visit, the timing of this visit is not linked with the Russia-Ukraine war at all. This is an annual summit planned well in advance. It traditionally takes place in December. So to me, there's no surprise at all. In the past, from the Russian side, they always come in December. I don't think there have been many exceptions to that. So I don't see any change in that approach. If you look at why now,
but Mr. Putin chose not since the war. This is his first visit to India. In that context, does that shadow the visit in any way?
I don't think so, because last year we visited. It's by rotation. The previous year in 2023 there was a miss because dates couldn't be worked out. It might have been mutually agreed to let that pass, and that's the way it was. But that is the only occasion when they have missed out, linked also with earlier with COVID. But otherwise, there's been a tradition of these visits, which I don't think you've had with any other country, whereas regularly since the year 2000, with, as I said, the COVID and one other occasion, you've had these regular in and outgoing visits from both sides.
Let me get a Russian perspective for a moment. Alexei Zakharov, what is the importance Russia attaches to its relationship with India, given the fact that Russia has found itself isolated within Europe? Large parts of Europe today are questioning Russia for what it's done in Ukraine. We've even seen 3 ambassadors write an article in an Indian newspaper just 2 days ago. Then the Russian ambassador hits back. But the truth of the matter is, does Russia see India also as an all-weather friend, as India sees Moscow?
Yeah, I think that since the war in Ukraine, India's significance for Russian foreign policy only increased. And India has always been a long-standing friend, a strategic partner. But after being cut off from the European market and isolated from the West politically, I think that Russia started to reevaluate the partnership, and it started to appreciate more India as a largest market. So we could see a lot of Russian effort to boost economic ties, to explore Indian market. There have been many Russian businesses making inroads into the Indian market, and there have been attempts from the Russian side to facilitate trade and economic cooperation through introducing different payment mechanisms, through increasing investment into the Indian economy. So in that sense, I think that India's importance, India's alliance, has only grown further.
You know, it's interesting you're focusing on the trade aspect, because India has a ballooning trade deficit at the moment with Russia. Brahma Chellaney, do you believe that is one of India's concerns, or is India looking at Russia primarily, particularly in this visit, and Moscow, as defense partners? That's where the real focus remains. Will it expand beyond that? Do you see actually a stronger relationship building, given also the ties that Russia has with China? Russia has also been signing defense deals with Pakistan in the recent time. How do you see the Russia-India relationship? Does it go beyond defense cooperation?
The relationship with Russia, Rajdeep, is very important, both for India's strategic interests and for better balance and greater maneuverability in Indian foreign policy. Without damaging the relationship with the US, which is equally important for India, India needs to uphold its special and privileged partnership with Russia. India needs both the US and Russia to counter China, to answer your question on China. So India needs both the US and Russia to counter China. The constant challenge for India is to carefully balance its foreign policy between Washington and Moscow so as to underpin India's independent approach to international affairs. The fact that US policy has pushed Russia closer to China makes it more imperative for India to maintain robust ties with Moscow. But look at the irony today. India's tried and tested partnership with Russia stands in stark contrast to America's erratic and punitive policy toward India. The US under Trump has slapped tariffs on India that exceed those on China. It has quoted Pakistan in ways that revive bitter Cold War memories, and it has singled India out for secondary sanctions while sparing other major Russian energy importers like the EU, Turkey, and Japan. In effect, Washington today is waging a quiet economic war on India. So, against this background, Rajdeep, Putin's visit to India carries outsized geopolitical significance.
You know, it's interesting because Rory Suchet, Vladimir Putin, you're a presenter with Russian RT TV. How much importance will this visit be given in the Russian media itself? RT India is being launched now by Russia in this country, obviously to increase Russia's view of the world. But how important does Moscow see India? Is it seen as a strategic partner? Is it seen as a potential ally? How does Russia see India from your vantage point?
Russia sees India from not just a strategic point of view, but from a deeply entrusted friendship. This is something that goes back not just years, but decades. It goes back to the Soviet Union and beyond. I mean, a perfect example, the 1972 India War that really kicked off in 1971, that resulted in the creation of Bangladesh. The Soviet Union was militarily supporting India during this. And we all know that India was victorious in that war. But let's take a step away from that for a moment. Think about the body language, think about the embraces, but think about the language. My dear friend. That is how Putin refers to Modi. As we saw Modi saying, our all-weather friend, our trusted ally. This is an intrinsic partnership today. But it's not just about Russia and India. It's about the new multipolar world order as well. We're seeing Russia and India that have forged their position on the global stage now, standing upright in front of the world. When you say that Russia is isolated, it is not isolated. You've got the Euro-Atlantic Alliance that represents just 10% of the world. Let me say that again. The Euro-Atlantic Alliance represents 10% of the world. So the Western political and media landscape, with a very clear agenda to demonize Putin and so on and so forth, they say these kinds of things. But when you watch the way that when Putin attends a BRICS summit or the ASEAN summit, friends with the SCO, you see the leaders coming to Moscow. In no way, shape, or form is Putin isolated on the global stage. The partnership between Russia and India has stood the test of time and will continue to do so. The only worry is when you have someone like Donald Trump in the White House that likes to dish out his so-called tariffs that really are just sanctions, he is expediting the coagulation of strategic partnerships in the world. That is why we're seeing these new friendships and partnerships in the BRICS, the SCO, the ASEAN, and so forth. He is expediting the development and the maturation of this polycentric world order. And the people who stand on stage in this polycentric world order is India, Russia, the global south, China. And these countries are now standing up taller than ever before. Why? Because their focus is on their sovereign interests, something that Trump doesn't like.
I like the use, Rory, of the word that you're using, polycentric world order. Ajay Malhotra, that in a sense is the significance also in a way of what's happening, because we have now, as described just now, an erratic relationship or a relationship with all the ups and downs with an erratic US president who has imposed 25% extra penalties on India for buying Russian oil. And India seemingly has capitulated and agreed. Many Indian companies are reducing their dependence on Russian oil. Is it possible to balance Russia and America? Is it possible to really do that in this new world order?
You see, I don't believe India's role is to balance anyone against anything. we are there an emerging, a re-emerging power in our own right, and we should be treated accordingly by everyone. I think the Russians treat us with great respect, and so are the Americans till now. In fact, Trump, under his first administration, that's when we decided to call it a comprehensive global strategic partnership with America, when he came here in February 2020. With the Russians, there's no such problem, but we find with the Americans, suddenly you have, as you pointed out, the problems with tariffs, the problems with sanctions, the problems with H-1B visas, the problems with Pakistan, and the strong tilt towards Pakistan, which is really a troublesome neighbor of ours, which it is, the Americans don't know it, and which they continue to regard as a major non-NATO ally. So these are all things of concern. So we are not here to kind of provide a balance between them. We want good relations with both USA and Russia. With Russia, there's reciprocity, there's a reciprocal response from the Russian president, and therefore we get on well with them. And this has been a tradition now for a long time. So it's not only a time-tested, but a well-trusted relationship.
But
with the Americans, they will have to earn our friendship once again. This can't go on much longer. They themselves are now talking with Putin, and it shows that at least they're trying to head in the right direction. And I do hope that the end result of all of this would be USA and Russia having a better understanding and relationship, and then it also helping us move ahead, because then the tariffs would become not so relevant, the sanctions would certainly become irrelevant, and then we have to see what the attitude is on Pakistan and what it's up to.
You know, Pakistan is also a factor there, Alexei Zakharov, because you look at South Asia and you see the relationship in a way that America is building slowly with Pakistan and its military leadership. We've also seen the Pakistan leadership go to Moscow. Does Moscow see India very differently to an Islamabad Rawalpindi? That India is, as we've been saying, all-weather friend. We've gone through good times and bad. Pakistan more transactional. Am I right in saying that?
Well, I think we can't even compare Russia's relationship with India and Pakistan, because the level of cooperation with Pakistan is definitely not at the same level. We have never seen any visit by Russian leader, neither in Soviet times nor in the modern Russia. And it's also reflective of the level of the relationship, to my mind. If we take economic aspect, then the bilateral trade is just around $1 billion. Yes, there was a relative rise over the past several years. Russia is exploring different areas of economic cooperation with Pakistan. Of course, there are regular talks both at political level. There are now regular parliamentary exchanges. There is a regular exchange at the level of Intergovernmental Commission. There is some track of cooperation in energy. But when you look at the cooperation between Russia and Pakistan, then it's always very good on surface. They discuss many things, but I haven't seen many outcomes. I think that the situation within Pakistan itself, their problematic economic situation, is a major hinder for that. And I think that if we compare at the level of trust,
there's also
it's also not at the same level.
So you're saying India is at a completely different level. Point taken. Sure.
I mean,
but
in
Brahma
South Asia,
Chellaney, you mentioned earlier the C factor, China. I come back to it, Brahma, because China remains in many ways India's greatest challenge. In many ways, how to deal with China. Now, Russia and China have a very strong relationship. Does India raise the issue, despite the fact that we are part of regional groupings like BRICS, like the SCO? Should India be taking a firmer stand to ensure, A, that Russia recognizes India's concerns vis-a-vis China?
Well, first, look at the symbolism of Putin's visit to India. The symbolism of his visit matters even more than the deliverables. This is Putin's first trip to India since the Ukraine war began, and by showing up in New Delhi, he's advertising that Russia has options beyond China. The US, as you know, by isolating Russia from Western markets, has effectively turned China into Russia's critical economic lifeline. But Putin's visit to India shows that Russia values its partnership with India and will not allow itself to become a junior partner to Beijing. And India, by hosting Putin, is making clear that it rejects the Western-imposed binary of with us or against us. India's message is that it will chart its own independent path, including treating Russia as a reliable long-term partner, especially when Washington has been treating India with a casual disregard that borders on strategic negligence. And we should not forget one thing that, that Rory Suchet underlined, which is that the China factor has been central to India's partnership with Moscow, and it goes back to the 1971 war. But for that friendship treaty that India signed with the Soviet Union, Nixon administration, President Nixon, had been egging on China to intervene, to open another front against India. It was that friendship treaty with Moscow that prevented China from opening a military front against India when there was genocide going on in East Pakistan, which later became Bangladesh, through a short Indian military intervention. So the China factor has been central to India's partnership with Moscow right since the early 1970s. And even today, if you look at the geography, Russia is to the north of China, and India is to the south of China. And Russia-India partnership is critical to imposing discrete checks on Chinese power. The only missing link in this bigger picture is that America, instead of recognizing Russia's importance vis-a-vis China, has pushed Russia closer to China through unprecedented sanctions against Moscow.
And some of those sanctions, of course, are hurting India as well, Rory, because here you've got India, which was doing oil deals with Russia, and Putin imposes 25% additional penalties. He doesn't do it with other parts of Europe, which have also done deals with Russia. So the hypocrisy, the double standards comes out. Should a stronger message, therefore, be sent by Russia and India at the meeting that will take place also to Washington? That you cannot have this global hypocrisy anymore in this multipolar world order.
It is fascinating. I think you raise a very, very good point. Let's keep in mind that a fair amount of the oil that goes from Russia to India is being sold off to America's European allies. And so when Trump is trying to tariff/sanction India for buying this Russian oil, he's actually de facto sanctioning his friends forever across the European Union. Now, let's keep this in mind. When the conflict in Ukraine kicked off, the European Union quickly said, we're not going to buy any more Russian energy. We're not going to put so-called money into Putin's so-called war coffers. Well, what happened? Exactly what Vladimir Putin said would happen. The sanctions boomerang. Right now, the European economy is in stagnation. It is barely reaching 1% growth. The forecast is atrocious. Meantime, the economies of the BRICS countries and Russia in particular doing very well. Russia is looking at 3% growth. Russia is now the most sanctioned country in the world, and yet its economy is the fourth largest in the world in terms of PPP, purchasing power parity. This is something that Vladimir Putin warned the West about. You sanctioned me, those sanctions will boomerang. Meantime, as Europe tries to fund the Kiev regime with money it simply doesn't have, what does the future hold for Europe? It looks disastrous as the multipolar world now is taking the lead. We are witnessing the economic financial infrastructure of the world heading east. The Euro-Atlantic Alliance is trying to keep its grip, but its grip is watching the world slide through its hands like grains and granules of sand. There is a new world order in town. And this is one of the reasons why Donald Trump is tariffing and sanctioning all these countries around the world to stall their growth and try to put them in their place. It's too little, too late. Hello, new polycentric world order.
Can I therefore ask you in conclusion, Rory, there will be those, of course, who will say there is a moral position that India must take in support of Ukraine. I've heard it from a number of European nation ambassadors, but from others as well. There is a moral position that the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine was invaded by Russia. What will you tell those who will say that Vladimir Putin will also have to answer to certain stands that he's taken vis-a-vis Ukraine in terms of Russian expansionism? A quick final comment.
Who financed the Maidan coup of 2014?
Rory, go ahead.
Who ousted the democratically elected leader of Ukraine? The United States, the State Department admitted we spent $5 billion ousting the democratically elected leadership of Ukraine in 2014. Let me assure you, the conflict did not start a few years ago. The conflict started in 2014. When you want to achieve regime change in a country, what do? You sanction it and you try, as Washington said, to bring it to its knees. That has failed. The only thing that has worked with the sanctions is it's brought Europe economically to its knees. It's a classic play out of Langley, Virginia, when they want to achieve regime change. Either you do it physically, forcibly, militarily, or you sanction a country to such a level that the populace becomes so dissatisfied that the public achieves the regime change for Washington. They wanted that to happen in Moscow. Guess what? All these sanctions, all this Russophobia, all this anti-Russia rhetoric has only galvanized the Russian public around the Russian President Vladimir Putin. The support for the Kremlin in Russia to date has never been stronger.
Rory Suchet, I must confess, I look forward to listening to you on RT. You make some wonderful observations from, of course, a Russian perspective, but it's good to have you on the show and my other guests. Good to have you all. We'll have plenty more of you. The visit starts tomorrow. Remember, of course, India Today is getting that world exclusive interview with Vladimir Putin. We will have it on air same time tomorrow and excerpts right through the day tomorrow along with special guests.